Alright, this is 7th grade math 3.6, which is going to be kind of a culmination of everything we've learned now. We're going to take what we've learned with graphs and apply them. This is on page 144, and we're going to kind of pull double duty with the key vocabulary and the key concept right here. They're basically the same things. If I could spell, it would be. Okay, so if you look in the key concept box, it kind of defines, we're talking about appropriate data displays. You all know what a bar graph and a line graph and all that stuff is, but when do you use that stuff? So a bar graph, if you look on page 144, there's what you need to put. That's when you display data in distinct categories. You survey your friends, what's their favorite food? That's categories, distinct categories. Line graph displays data over time. If you are keeping track of how much a plant grows for your science fair project over the course of a month, every day you would maybe plot that in a line graph. A stem and leaf plot is when you need to group data in order. Remember, we made those ordered stem and leaf plots. Box and whisker plot shows how data is spread out. Okay, and a histogram compares frequencies that fall in equal intervals. And that's what we just did in the last lesson. So if you have distinct categories, you make a bar graph. If you want to do data over time, you make a line graph. If you want your data to be in order and grouped nice, so you could maybe find the median, you want to make a stem and leaf plot. And a box and whisker plot shows how the data is spread out, which a lot of times you can take the data from a stem and leaf plot and make a box and whisker plot. That's kind of a neat little double duty on that. And then histogram, what we just did. So let's take a look at a couple of things. Example 1, a professional bowler wants to display his scores for the year. Without displaying individual data, what data display should he use? So he just wants to take the values and he doesn't want to show any individual data, so he doesn't wake up. That's not a bar graph. That wouldn't be a line graph. So it would have to be, and a stem and leaf plot would be individual data, so he'd have to combine it into a histogram or a box and whisker plot. And I don't think that would show individual data then. Misleading data. Now, sometimes data can be misleading. If you look at the top of page 145 before we talk about this advertisement right here, I want to read that to you. The top of page 145 says misleading data displays. You need to be able to identify potentially misleading data displays so that you will interpret them correctly. Examples of potentially misleading data displays are shown below. The first one has a bar graph, but notice it's got what's called a broken vertical axis. And actually there's one right here. A broken axis means that you start with a number, like you start with 0, but they decided to number by 2s, but not until 50 because the data didn't start until 50. So you don't have to waste the room with the 10, 20, 30, 40. But you have to be careful because sometimes that makes it misleading. It seemed like that number, that first number in September, is really low when actually it's a pretty big number because you started it off that way. So it's important to remember a broken line graph. The middle one on the top of page 145 says large increments. Notice they're numbering by 200s. So really that doesn't look like a very big number. It really is compared to the other numbers there. And then small intervals and histograms, you know, they're not really, there's only 2 numbers in each of those intervals. So it's not really taking the data and putting it into groups where you can understand it. So check this out. Is the advertisement potentially misleading? Explain. Our jeans are runaway sellers. Get a pair before we run out. So in September they sold 52 pairs. In October about 53. I don't know, not even 53. I don't know how you sell half a pair of jeans. In November, 53. In December, they sold 55. And in January, man, it looks like that thing is just going through sky, rocketing through the roof. And they only went to 60 in January, from 52 to 60. Well, those don't, to me, seem like that they're selling that fast. Even though the graph looks like, wow, holy cow, look how high it's going up. But I don't think it really, you know, being with the graph being at 50, it makes it misleading. A car dealership sells 7 makes of cars. Which data display could be used to compare sales for each make of car last year? I don't know, I think I'd put them in a bar graph. There's 7, they're distinct categories, 7 different types of cars. I would make it a bar graph. A store wants to display profits for this quarter. Which type of data display would be used to compare this quarter's profit to last quarter's profit? Probably a double line graph. I would put this quarter in one color and maybe last quarter's in another color and put it in a line graph. That's the data over time. So that's why I think I would use that. Line graph. Yep. Here, let me go back. Line graph because it shows data over time. Suppose you read, I'm trying to read that, you redraw, wow, redraw the line graph in example 2 with a scale of 0 to 60 using increments of 10. How does it compare with the graph in example 2? So redraw this graph and do it with 10. So you'd go, you know, here you'd go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. What would that do to the graph? I think it just wouldn't show as much. Let's see what they say. I don't think it would show as much of a rise. Appears to show a significant rise in sales. The graph without the break in small increments would show a less impressive rise. It wouldn't have as much of a high drop off or a high jump up to the 60 as it did. So a lot of this is reading, kind of analyzing a little bit, taking the time to think about it. You might have to reread the problems a couple of times in order to get it right, and see how it goes. And it's not a long assignment, but just make sure you answer the questions fully and completely. Anytime you have to make graphs, if you have to make graphs, make sure that you are using graph paper. So that's it. We'll see you next time.